The Season 5 PTR is here, we've been playing it, and I think it's literally game changing. Let's jump in, let's show you all that we've got so far, and let's talk about it. Having said what I just said, I'm going to actually start off in the live server. Now this is something a little bit funny, but in the PTR there is something called free movement, which is all about how the mouse works basically. So your character goes in like any direction, but your cursor doesn't. Weirdly, if you turn that on in the PTR, and then coming to the live mode, it actually works in live. So this is my actual character. I'm probably going to try PTR either like first thing as soon as I've ended this video or first thing tomorrow. And you can sort of see what it is. So if you're like running away and then you run back, you see how like I didn't change my cursor or anything like that. Normally if you do that, you will start backpedaling like this. Now you can see if I block, then it actually works as it would normally. But as soon as I let go of block, I turn around and I run. And I think for a lot of people, that's going to feel really smooth. I actually think this is very good, just like for almost all kind of combat. I actually think this might be the new default way that people who are trying to be competitive will actually use. The only downside I can see is that you don't walk backwards, which you might want to do. But yeah, like if I'm facing, for example, if I'm facing this way and then I start my attack, I can just do it like that. And, you know, you can just run around like this. Attack, well, okay, I'm getting attacked by the mobs or what have you, but I don't know. I think it's really good for movement. You don't have to move the cursor all the time just to like turn the direction. You can just sort of go in any direction you like. But obviously if you want to attack and you want to like, you know, you can still do this. You can sort of still move the cursor as you're running. And if you attack, it goes where your cursor is. You can actually make it so that when you attack, it would just go in the direction you were going. But for me, I think that feels a little bit weird. You can also do the same with block. And yeah, but this is actually in live. I know that's a bit weird. If you really want to try this in live, you can download the PTR, turn the setting on in the PTR, and then come to live and you will have it. And it's a little bit weird, but that's just the way that it works. Very thankfully, they actually made an EU server for this, so it means I get to feel it properly rather than just, you know, having ping issues. So here on the PTR, if you go to game and then you see gameplay and you see freeform movement, there's two different options, right? Yeah, by default, it's on for the controller, and by default, it's off for the mouse and keyboard because that's the way it normally looks. And I'll just turn it off. And normally when you play the game, you know, if you run back, you start backpedaling like this, and you don't really your character doesn't turn, you're always sort of looking forward, right? You're always looking forward, and the only way to turn is to use your mouse. And that's not the case if you turn off the freeform movement. Or you turn it on, I should say. If I turn it on, you can see I can then run around in a circle. And I think a lot of people are just going to prefer it like that, honestly. Myself included, I think. You can make it so that you attack in front of you instead of where your cursor goes. But yeah, it's actually, that's just the way that it works. And by the way, how the overall combat and movement feels, it's hard to compare, right? It's not that big of a difference. Like, let me be clear, it's not that big of a difference. There's a couple of things that I've noticed. I think like bunny hopping has changed a little bit. Also, if I'm sort of running one way and then I jump and then I press the other button, you can sort of do that thing where you jump and then change direction, or you jump right at the very end and it feels like it changes direction a little bit. Hard to get it to sort of show you what I mean, but yeah, okay, it's a bit weird. Like sometimes earlier on it felt like it wasn't actually landing the jump. I think it's a little bit inconsistent because it's not doing what it was doing earlier on. But you know, the movement, it feels good. The combat and everything feels fine, by the way. Completely fine. And at this point, I'll just talk about the seasonal trial. So we'll come back to the movement in a minute, but we've done the seasonal trial on the PTR. I was sort of shot calling this with people from the raid. Big shout out to anybody who was helping me with that, and big shout out to anybody who was watching that. I have to say, it's sort of like two main fights. I'm not going to go through the mechanics. I don't want to spoil it for you. It's not the most challenging thing in the world, but the first couple of times we wiped on the first boss once and then we did it. We wiped on the second boss once and then we did it. The mechanics are fun though. I think mostly understandable, although the second one I perhaps didn't really understand, but there was a little bit of a bug where I had the text on the screen from the first run all the way through the second run, but that's just the way that it goes. Overall, I thought the set piece was quite nice, the visuals was quite pleasing. The soul trial itself was quite good, and then seeing it here was also quite good in the 10-man form. The rewards look to be quite decent. It's also where one of the first artifacts that we find is, and that is the Great Axe. Not going to talk about where all the artifacts are and stuff like that. There's just too much to talk about for this one video. And honestly, by the time that I get ready for that, I guess somebody else will have already done it. And the artifact, by the way, is the Spin to Win axe, which I'm just going to show you right now because it's sort of funny. Look how much you spin. It's pretty damn crazy. You spin so much and so long, and it's really fast, and I really enjoy it. It's good fun. Now, we'll stick with mouse and keyboard just briefly. The lock on, by the way, is default to be on. So if you press your middle mouse button down, you will lock on like that. Keep in mind that this is PvE only. It doesn't work in PvP, okay? Now, what I will say is that it uses the middle mouse button, which sort of limits your ability to do the pings. I literally cannot ping anymore, and it's set to the same button. So there's going to have to be a different button for pinging. But you can see, yep, I'm locked on. I'm not even touching it with my right hand. I'm just moving. You can see it's very much locked on. And if I go to my melee weapons, I could run over and I'm literally just going to play one-handed, and I'm just going to sort of spin. You can see it's literally, I'm not controlling it with like two hands, I'm controlling it with one hand. It's all just locked on. As I said, keep in mind that that is literally PvE only. It doesn't work in PvP, so there is no lock on in PvP. I personally don't think it's that strong. There's apparently a setting where you can make it so the snap isn't as strong, like it's not as quick, so it's not as dizzying. The way that I do that, by the way, is mouse up and down, scroll wheel up and down. But yeah, I think it's okay. You can't get headshots. It just locks onto the midriff. There's no up or down movement. What is interesting as well, by default, the cursor now goes red when it's over an enemy, so you can sort of see when you're actually hitting them or not. There is a bit of a limitation to that, which I'm not going to be able to show you because I've got aggro. But if you get too far, then it won't actually be red at all. It'll sort of it won't show, but you know, there's a range limitation to that, but it's okay. And I think really that's the main difference in mouse and keyboard land. I don't think anything crazy there. As I said, the overall feel, it feels good. It doesn't feel that crazily different. I think they've achieved that. So if they're getting massive performance improvements whilst doing what they've like achieved here, then that's great because it feels pretty much the same. Not seeing it in Wars. Somebody did say in the seasonal trial on a low-end computer that it ran really well. Obviously I can't validate that, but I think this movement, honestly, it sounds weird to be like game changing, but I really think it's pretty damn important. I think a lot of people are going to want to play like this, and I think they almost should make it the default for new players because I really do think it just feels better. Now I'll jump into the settings briefly. So controller, by the way, there are only two types of settings. Now I don't know how you switch between default and melee. I actually don't know how you do that, but it exists. Now there's a whole gambit of settings that you can change, all to do with like sensitivity, how long the lock on is, dead zones. This friction force, by the way, it basically is the thing that we're going to talk about with aim assist. So if you just move your cursor and then you move over it, it starts slowing down, and that exists in combat. Don't worry, I'm going to plug in a controller in a minute and show you. There's all different kinds of settings though, like up, down, left, right. You know, I find this, by the way, I want this to be really low, which is just the general sensitivity, but when I'm actually using the ADS, which is aim down sights, I generally wanted it high. And then the one that's in PvP, which is the sort of like the aim assist, if you will, is the aim friction strength. That's going to work in PvP and PvE, but I don't think it's busted. Now there is a toggle for aim assist, but if I sort of like, I don't know, it's not doing anything. I don't actually know what it does. It's not moving my cursor, and it's just the friction. I don't know the difference here. Let me plug in a control and let's just show you. Now the first thing you'll notice is the cursor. You can see it moves. Now what I'll show you with the friction, if you move over a button, basically it slightly slows down. Now with this, I'm not going to go through all the controls, but that movement is default on, by the way, with the controller, which feels fine. But what I'm going to show you is that the aim, right? So like if I just move right here, you'll see that it slows down. I'm not changing the speed here. You'll see that it slows down as you get over an enemy. Okay, I don't even do. I'm going to go as fast as I can and we'll see it. See how it slowed down? It's not like long lasting, but you can see how that will help you attack basically. It slows down over the enemy. So what you would do is you would use it, find the enemy, and then just leave it. So that's what you're going to use it for. You're going to do that. As soon as it slows down, you let go. And by the idea is that you'll hit. It'll be quite quick to change targets. Like you'll do that, hit, and if you want to run away, then you run away or what have you. And then you find the next target by doing the same thing. Like, I don't think it's going to be strong. They say there's an aim assist, right? There's an aim assist toggle, but I can't figure out what it does because it doesn't move my cursor. By the way, I'm using an Xbox 360 pad, like a really old one, by the way, so it's probably not very good. Somebody is using a PlayStation controller and they told me and sent me a screenshot so I can validate it, that it does also default, well not default, but when you plug it in, it changes to the PlayStation symbols, you know, like square, circle, etc. So I think if this game is going to console, which I think is very likely, then I think it might actually be both PlayStation and Microsoft. I said Microsoft, I mean Xbox, but to be fair, who cares? There's a couple of like new menus and stuff like that. So for example, it doesn't by default now compare what you have to like what you are mousing over. So if I look at I'm a PC, I'm just going to use mouse and keyboard right now, but let's say I want to look at these pants, it just shows me the pants. If I want to look at what I already have on and compare it, I've got to hold the right mouse button down, and then it compares it. A bit weird, but it is what it is. There's a few new menus and stuff like that, but nothing crazy. Just to say, in the season pass, there's nothing like really, pretty wild or anything like that. There's an Azoth Inductor at the end, but that's about it. A camp for the normal level, and a helm. One big thing is that we've already had our first nerf, and that is the Phoenix. This amulet now is actually only going to make you invulnerable for 1 second instead of 2. Still think it's going to be pretty usable if you can get a potion off in that time, but obviously less usable. I don't know if this is new or if it's my imagination, but look how it's doing this sort of shimmering effect. Is that new? I sort of feel like it is. Doesn't work on anything other than artifacts. Maybe it did exist, maybe I just don't know. So much has changed, it's hard to remember what has. There was nothing crazy with cooking, just as consolidated as you would expect. The food, by the way, for the con food is now going to use the Sumptuous Rabbit, which is almost certainly going to send the prices wild. The prices for food is going to be like all over the place for a couple of days. You craft like 3 of them, but you need 5 of them or something. Pretty weird. But, it is what it is. One thing I'm not really a fan of is these new icons. They've got these like new colored icons, which if I'm honest, they look like too gimmicky for me. Like they're too bright and bold, and I just don't like them. I can't imagine my entire map being covered in this kind of stuff. I don't like it, but it exists. I'm not really going to talk about the rewards for any of this stuff, by the way, because this isn't like a video talking about the best item that you can get, but there does appear to be some really good rewards from some of this stuff. I'm not going to go there because I already did on the stream, but in Mirgard, by the way, there's an absolute shed ton of Orichalcum. Like, there's loads and it's everywhere and it's pretty crazy and wild. I think the price of Orichalcum has already started to drop because of that. The Weaponsmith hat does drop from this person in Mirgard. And look at this bad boy. There is a data mined item of some kind, which is like a perk ID weapon PvP zone. Now you'll notice that the new weapon here is dagger, but I sort of ignored dagger because it's just always been there and it's never actually materialized. But it looks like a PvP zone might actually be coming. Is the Reddit rumor true? And we may be going to speak about that at some point as well. There is some new stuff in Mirgard, which is why I'm up here. You can see that this is a tent, outside of Mirgard. Technically I should have said Shattered Mountain. And in Mirgard itself, not only are the Ori nodes and stuff like that, there's actually stuff that you can tell is relating to quests, and it doesn't really change anything. But if you really want to do a new story now, you'll be only experiencing the new quest, which for a lot of people might be good. But really, I think the main thing is this movement. This patch sort of feels like a lot of little things that add up to something greater than its whole. It's the setup of something very good, but whether or not we'll get to that very good point in a timely manner, well, we can't really answer that. The movement feels good, controller feels okay. I don't think that friction is going to be a problem. Don't think it's going to make anybody better at the game just because there's a bit of friction. I mean, if I had that on mouse and keyboard, it probably would make me better, but it's trying to balance it rather than put one ahead or the other. Overall, I'm really pleased with what we have, and if it makes the performance better for them and, there's less bugs and that kind of thing, then all the better. I mean, it can look a little bit silly if you're going around in a circle, but if I'm honest, I really like it. Look, you can also go around your mount in a circle. I mean, that's truly beautiful. That's what we want. I'm just having fun doing that now. So yeah, there's probably a lot to discuss over the coming few days and stuff like that. Really like the movement. The seasonal trial's quite nice, but some people will say it's too easy, but I don't think it's designed to be the hardest of the hard content, but I really like the mechanics. Mirgard has a lot of Orichalcum, so that price is going to go shooting down, I think. The food changes, I don't really like the food changes in general, but, they exist. And yeah, overall, pretty wild, but there's nothing like, if you're coming back to the game and you're watching this video and you're like, oh, I thought I was going to return, you probably don't need to return yet. I would wait. Generally around about September again, we'll probably have a lot of announcement, a lot of content. So let's have a look there. But I'm getting very excited for what the future of New World might be, because you know what? It feels like they're heading in a interesting and positive direction. Maybe slower than what I wanted, but there's some sweeping changes around and I like it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'm very tired today, so if I rambled a little bit, then it is what it is. I like stream for 12 hours, so I'm tired. There ain't no two ways about it. For now, love you. Goodbye.